Well, it's brilliant that all you guys are here today. I've been part of the church now for about a year and 3 months, and honestly, from the bottom of my heart, I've been made to feel so welcome and so blessed, and I genuinely feel that this is a place that I can call home. So I'm going to share my story. So, I was born in 1981. My parents were both working as in the mental health nursing sector. They worked in a private hospital where lots of people are that are very dangerous and very sick and very ill. As I was growing up, I had a sister when I was 3. We had a lot of family. We lived in a little town, little market town. And things sort of like started off not on a great trajectory with me in life. I mean, I don't know how many people know sort of anything to do with sort of like some of the things that I've been through sort of as a person, but basically, my family weren't Christian. My dad would say still that he's an atheist, and my mum would probably fit into an agnostic, but they grew up like my dad used to be a hippie, and I was their first child, and so I had this thing happen to me when I was about 4 or 5 years old. Just a wee little whipper. I had a big afro, loads of curly hair, and I looked so cute apparently. Well, I think I did. And anyway, I had something happen to me that was very, very scary and very difficult for me to go through as a child. So I had this incident where Mum had just told me to go to bed, to go and get myself ready for bed. And so I did. I came chuttling along to the bottom of the stairs. Well, I looked up the stairs to go upstairs to get changed. And when I looked at the top of the stairs, I saw a demon. I saw a demonic figure at the top of the stairs. And I was absolutely terrified. It was like a 4 foot tall, green person with yellow eyes. And as it looked down at me from the top of the stairs, I was more terrified than I know how, if it's possible to be that scared. I was so scared. And I stood there looking at it, just shell-shocked and frozen. I couldn't move. And it just looked like it was like evilly, I'm going to get you. After a minute, or what seemed like a minute, I went running to my mummy. Mummy, there's a monster at the top of the stairs. You know, that's the people that you run to, the people that protect you, the people that have got you, that make you feel safe is your parents, obviously. And my mum comforted me the best that she could. She took me upstairs, listened to me emphatically, trying to just calm me down and tell me that it's okay, there's no such thing as monsters. Looked under my bed, stuff like that, put me to bed. Obviously felt that, she'd done what she needed to do and that everything was going to be okay. Well, I was terrified as a 4-year-old, as a very small child, you can imagine, or, it got to me to the very core of my being. After that, I became extremely scared of the dark. And I used to be scared of going to bed. But obviously as a kid, you couldn't talk to my parents about it, because you don't even know how to articulate, to put it in a way that they can understand. So I used to lay in bed, at night, I used to make sure that my feet weren't hanging out, and I'd often just cover my head up so that I felt safe in some way and cocooned from the darkness that I felt was so threatening in my life. And sometimes I had a baby sister at the time who would have been about a year old, and I used to worry. I'm like, is she going to be okay? What the monster's going to get her as well? And so I kind of grew up believing in monsters, in darkness, in the boogeyman, in the very present evil around us. And so after that, we moved house from out into a village, which was like a change. which was good, and I moved schools. I did quite well at school. I was always quite a friendly person, quite a sensitive person. Like I liked the friends that I made, and I tried to help people at school and stuff. And sometimes I got more pleasure out of just helping other people than I did actually being at school. I got through school. And in that sort of before I left primary school, I started experiencing things like where you start to notice that some kids are more pushy and bullyish, and some kids are more gentle and sensitive, and I fitted into the gentle and sensitive sort of like kind of kid. And there were times during that time where sort of in those sort of 5 to 6 years where things happened that I just presumed were normal because it's all I knew. But there were certain times where I'd hear a voice say to do something or something like that. Like for example, one time we were on the sports field playing football, and I felt a voice say, "Just trip that guy over as you're running." And so I thought about it, and I did it, and I took both of his legs out from underneath him, and this guy was a year older than me, and he was a bit more of the bullish guy, so I really didn't think about what I was doing, what I was getting myself into. Yeah. And so there were things like that where I didn't know whether I was just thinking to do it, and that it must have been a good idea, but it wasn't, obviously. But there were quite a few things like that, and when I got into, in the year before I went to secondary school, there was an incident where I was staying with some friends of family, because my family and their family worked together, and so sometimes we'd look after their kids, sometimes, and they had like 5 kids, and sometimes we'd go over there, stay over and stuff. And there was an incident where the eldest guy, and we were camping out in a tree house, which we called it a tree house, but it was like a shed on stilts with like this small tree underneath it, which was really cool. And I was really excited. I looked up to this guy. We used to play video games because he had 4 sisters, so like me and him were like the guys, because I had a sister as well. And yeah, we were out in the treehouse, and we'd asked if we could stop out in there. We got all the duvet covers and stuff, and we were really looking forward to being there, because I didn't get to do that kind of stuff very often. And during that night, what actually happened was he molested me. He was about 4 years older than me. And I had never been, I grew up, my family were quite safe. I'd never been exposed to anything sexual or even, you know, if I was one of the kids, you know, if you see a couple kissing on TV, you'd be like, "Oh, I don't want to see that, it's gross." Like, it was like, yeah, I had a kind of reaction. And this thing happened, which I didn't understand. Like, he was trying to get me to do stuff. I didn't understand exactly what he wanted or what the point was or anything. But I felt this intense fear, like a paralyzing fear. And as I kind of lay there, I was hearing voices, and I was hearing voices of laughing going on around me. And I thought I could see stuff going on around me, like in the darkness, like there was like figures around, almost like watching. And like, to me, that was more kind of real than what was going on. And like, I don't know what happened. Maybe I just like shut down, shut off. The next day in the morning, I wanted to talk to his parents. I wanted to say something. Like, I felt like a part of me died. I felt like a part of me was just snapped. Like, I tried like to talk to the parents, and I felt like they'd been looking at me, and that they could see this pain that was going on inside of me. That I thought that this is obvious. Like, if you look in my eyes, you can see how traumatized I am right now. but they didn't. And then when my parents came to pick me up, the same thing. I'm like, on the inside, I'm screaming out, look, something's gone on, I need help. But on the outside, who knows? So there was that. Went into secondary school. During my time in secondary school, the first couple of years in secondary school, I was kind of chill. I did my work, I wanted to work hard. I loved stuff like art, drawing, performing arts, music. I liked being on stage and in front of people. I wasn't nervous about it. I always did the school plays and the productions and stuff like that. And so I got into secondary school, and then one day, like I think it was in year 8, because I lived in a village, so every day we had to get a bus from the village into the town where the school was. And one day on the bus riding back from school, I was sat behind a friend of mine whose name is Nathan, and he was a big guy. He was a big guy. And anyway, the guy that I picked over when I was playing football that time, who was also riding the school bus, him and some other guys would just call people names and stuff, and it's like, I felt like I really don't, because I felt quite sensitive and empathetic. I don't want this guy to have his feelings hurt, because I don't want him to break down or anything. Whether he would or not, I don't know. But, you stick up for your friends and stuff. And so anyway, as this guy, whose name is Woody, started actually giving Nathan grief, I thought, well, do you know what? Just like I do sometimes, do without thinking. I'm just like, just leave him alone. This guy was a year older than me, and leave him alone. And then it's like, oh, what are you gonna do? What are you gonna do? And then so it's like, and then someone said like, fight him. So it's like, okay, we're gonna fight. So like I ended up. It was like, right, we're gonna meet. We're gonna go home. We're gonna meet on the play park in like an hour for a fight. So I'm like, okay, I've never had a fight before, but it can't be that hard. So I went home, I got my leather gloves that my mum had given me, and I cut the fingers off to make some fingerless gloves to make myself feel hard. I started psyching myself out in the mirror, and the way I figured it is, if I go out there and I beat this guy up, it's going to be like a victory. Because this guy, there's a lot of people that didn't want to get on this guy's bad side. Not that he was a big guy, there's just one of those guys that loved pushing people's buttons and stuff like that. So that was it. So in a way, even at the time, I felt like this is a bit like a David and Goliath moment. Even though I'm bigger, he's the giant, because I'm the geek. So we went out there and we waited, and it took ages. He was late, which was really annoying. But when he came out with like shin pads from playing football. He's got shin pads on each leg, he's got one on each arm. He came out like he was doing some kind of ninja warrior thing. And then it proceeded to and there was a whole bunch of kids that had heard about this fight going on. And we were out on the playing field, and we just kind of like dodging about a little bit, and nothing really happening, and people got getting bored and like, come on. So I tried punching him a few times, and I just miss. And then he starts running around, and I'm chasing after him, and he's a guy he's skinny, he's got loads of energy, and maybe he was just trying to wear me out, or maybe he was trying to make me look like an idiot, I don't know. But ultimately what happened was at one point I managed to kick him, and he turned around and he just smacked me in the face, and he punched me, hit my lip, and my face went back like that. I'd never been hit in the face before, and honestly, I wasn't crying, but my eyes just watered. It was just I was I couldn't see, because everything was really blurry. And I tried, and you know how great school kind of playing fields are, where they play football for being smooth and stuff. Well, this was really bumpy, and I fell over and I'm on the floor, and everyone's round in a circle going, get him, get him, get him. Oh, and by the way, the guy that I'd actually gotten into this to stick up for, he wasn't there, he didn't come out. So I'm on the floor, I'm more hurt emotionally than physically. Because I hear all these people around me going, get him, get him, get him, people that I've never done anything to. And I just, it really got to me. And as I'm on the floor, I'm waiting for it to happen. I'm waiting for him to jump on top of me and start pounding me. But he didn't. Maybe he was just waiting for me to get up. So I got up and he wanted to fight. But I was like, at this point I'm holding back the tears, and that tone of voice where you can tell the person's upset was obviously quite clear. And I was like, no, that's it, I'm done, it's finished. I'm going. And like, I walked off, like quite slowly, like quite cool, like, you know, I didn't want to look like a complete loser. And the people were like trying to get him to run after me and stuff. And anyway, but I got round the corner and I pelted it. I was out of there. I'm like, I don't want them coming after me. I'm going to put some distance between me. But as I was running, like all of my emotions were just like running over. I was just so upset. And at that point, I was just like, God, if you're really out there, I need you to help me to fight my way through this life, because I can't do this by myself. Because the only person that I got in my life was me, and I was rubbish. So like, you know, I had no hope, and I didn't think about it. Well, I was kind of like, wow, that was mad. I just prayed, and I went home. The next day at the bus stop. To make things, because I was looking at myself, like, my injury doesn't look too bad, so I'll get a bit of my mum's makeup and I'll put it on to make myself look like I've got a black eye, because then I'm more likely to not be asked to go and fight again. Okay, but he came up to me the next day at the bus stop. He's like, "You all right, mate? How you doing?" I was like, "Yeah, I'm fine." Being submissive, I was just like, "No, I'm not. I just don't want any more." And so after that, I kind of decided I wasn't going to take the school bus anymore. So like very often, most of the time, it would take me an hour to walk home from school while everyone else is taking the bus. I'm walking home on my own. And being on my own became a massive part of my life. Even when I was with people, I was on my own. At the age 12, no, so at the age 13, well, like I say, I had friends, but I still kind of didn't know how to relate because I had so much going on inside. I got into drugs, I started smoking, started doing weed. At 14, when I was 14, I knew a drug dealer and I would go around there and sit and smoke weed a lot. 14, 15, parties, girls, stuff like that, going around, hanging around with, networking, getting to know more people that are getting up to no good so that I could hang around with them and get it to no good. I started getting into stuff like vandalism, getting very drunk and then doing things that nobody should ever do. I did some terrible things. I got kicked out of the Scouts. I'm not going to tell you why. You can see me after if you want to know. But it's bad. And during this time, especially with all the drugs and stuff, darkness and evil and spiritual things were very apparent to me. At 15, I would go out drinking on a Friday night, and I'd be listening to Frankie Goes to Hollywood in my bedroom with my hairbrush, psyching myself up, ready to go out, looking in the mirror. But what I find is like when I was looking in the mirror, I could see something else in me, in my reflection. Like, I'm like, that's not me, but is it me? Like, it was almost like if you look in the mirror, maybe you expect to see your own soul in your reflection. But I saw more than that. And on one hand, it scared me, but on the other hand, it made me kind of feel cool and edgy. Fast forward, drinking, bad things, waking up on a school roof, waking up in a field, waking up in the park under a bunch of bushes. And this, I'm still at school. So the last 2 years of my school life, I just lost interest. I got caught stealing at school. I got caught stealing from shops in town. I got caught stealing off of my parents. I got caught stealing off of my younger sister out of her piggy bank, because I needed to fulfill this desire that I had in my life to just self-destruct, no matter what I didn't want to die, but I had these strong urges that once I started drinking and doing drugs, I got to keep pursuing this, because if this is my identity, and I was going downhill. By the time I finished my exams, I managed to pass my exams. I didn't revise for anything, but I still managed to pass most of my exams. When I got to, as then time went by, I'm coming to the conclusion that there's a spiritual world in some way, but it's very much about me. It got to the point when I was 17, where I believed that I was a magic, psychic person, and that I was connected with the universe, and that it was, but regardless, I had to kind of figure out what was going on, because everything was connected. It was all about me, and I had to find out what was going on. And I thought I had magical powers. And then like one time, when I was 17, my dad came back from work, and I didn't hear him coming back in, and I was sat down in the living room trying to use telepathic magical powers to manipulate and control what was going on the TV. Because I believed I could. I believed I had a telepathic link to be able to influence reality on TV, even if it was stuff that happened 50 years ago. Dad came in, he's like, Andrew, what are you doing? Like, and at that point, my mind just split. I'm like, what do? Do I tell him? Oh, Dad, I'm just using magic to, I'm trying to practice my telepathic powers. How are you going to explain that to your atheist dad who's materialistic and stuff like that? But at the same time, I wanted to tell him, because it was a massive thing. And then at that point, I just had this split, this break in my brain, and I just couldn't tell him. I couldn't tell him, but he knew that something was very wrong. So he went to take me to see a psychiatrist, who gave me a doctor, who gave me some medication, and basically said that, look, said to my dad, your son's very, very sick. You're not very, very sick. Your son is sick, and he needs to go and see somebody. So they took me to psychiatrists and stuff, where I was diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia. And I didn't even know what that meant. So I'm like, and at that point, like, but they told my dad. They said, your son's going to need a lot of care for a long time. Just be ready to support him, to be a dad to him. Andrew's not going to be able to work. He's not going to be able to drive or have a family. He may spend time in institutions, sort of thing, and he's going to be on medication the rest of his life. And I was gutted. One, I didn't know what schizophrenia at the time. I didn't even know what it was. So, and they gave me this medication as well, which kind of like put me in a semi-comatose state. So I remember that I was laying on the sofa in my parents' house, pretty much unable to move, pretty much unable to feed myself, watching TV around Christmas time, and seeing the TV, and the TV's talking to me, like in a way that you probably wouldn't be able to comprehend. And like in the TV, I'm seeing like reincarnational dream cycles of the connections of the people that are around me and stuff like that. But I'm laying there, and I'm seeing all kinds of shapes and stuff in front of me. I mean, I was on some strong medication, and my tongue swelled up real big so that I could hardly swallow. And I laid there, and I just started thinking, is this my life now? And to be able to, I can't even express like how hard that time was, because it's like I went from hopeless to just a complete despair of anything in the future. Flash forward, I don't know. I carried on. After they changed my medication. I went out, still hanging around with my drug dealer friends, still doing that, still kind of trying to figure out what's going on. Wanted to move out. Got a little flat next door to my drug dealer, which was nice. So I always had something to do. Moved out, and then like that didn't go so well. I was living in like this little bed sit near the train station. It was really grim. It was just awful. And I used to, you could hear like pipes dripping, and it was just really depressing. So then I moved back in with my parents, and then like after a while, I decided I needed to move out again. I'd already stopped doing the majority of the drugs, so I wasn't doing ecstasy, I wasn't doing speed, I wasn't doing acid or mushrooms or anything like that anymore, and I never did heroin, but I was just still smoking the weed, smoking the marijuana like most days. And I ended up living in a sheltered accommodation, and at that point in my life, let's say like 3 or 4 years later, I was just a dead man. I was just so locked up within myself. I used to not wash, not take care of myself, not eat. I would spend the money that I got from the government on paying back the money that I owed on drugs. I'd stay up all night, sleep all day. And if I didn't have food, I would go and I would walk around town looking for spare bits of food that people might have left around in a bin or whatever, and I'd go around picking up cigarettes that people had dropped that they'd finished, so I could like take them home and smoke them. Like I looked like I was living like a semi-homeless existence, and I was hopeless, and I'd had no relationships. I'd sucked blood out of another person's arm at one point for a sort of like weird thing to do. Like I'd kissed men a couple of times. I'd say men when I was like 20, and but like life, when I got diagnosed with schizophrenia, life became more and more of a hell. Life became more and more hopeless, and it was awful. And one day I was walking through town looking for discarded cigarette ends, and a friend introduced me to a guy whose name is Paul, and he was out on the street, and he was a first-year Bible student. He was out just trying to share the gospel with people, with a team from the local AOG church, and he started talking to me and started talking about the gospel and stuff. Oh no, well, he started asking me about me, and what do I think about life and stuff, and I started telling him about how I think that we're all actually going to evolve into alien graves and be able to telepathically like move things and stuff like that, like most people think. It's kind of intrinsic within us, that's what we're meant to do. But then when he started sharing the gospel with me, it was very strange. Because even though I didn't know the foggiest what he was talking about, like Jesus this, like everlasting life that, there was some kind of power behind what he was saying that I knew it was true. And if that was true, that meant that what I thought wasn't true, which kind of threw me. And he asked me if he could pray for me, and I was like, yeah, sure, whenever, yeah, feel free, remember me next Tuesday when, But he was like, no, come on, we'll go and pray now. I was like, okay. So he took me around the corner, and there's people walking past. It was a market day. He started praying for me, started praying and praying, and then he started praying in tongues. And as he was praying for me, I just felt like almost like all the darkness just kind of like went like shriveled from from a everything to a next to nothing within me. And as he was praying for me, my arms went out like this and my eyes closed, and I felt like it was like nothing I'd ever known before. And he was praying for me, and he was praying that God would heal me and that God would bless me. And then he asked me if I wanted to give my life to Jesus. And still, I didn't fully understand, but I knew what he was saying was true, because the power and the love that was in it was just so amazing. And it was a struggle within me and a battle just to say yes. There's like, don't say yes, don't say yes. I said yes. And then he prayed with me, and I prayed, and I asked the Lord, like, Lord, please come into my life. Help me to live my life the way that you want me to live it, instead of me living my own life. Please just save me and forgive me of my sins. Thank you that you died on the cross for me. And then, and that was it. I knew that was real. I knew that God was real. No doubt whatsoever. And then I didn't see him again for 6 months. During those times, those 6 months, I was living in sheltered accommodation. I was like trying to pray, while I was smoking my joint, or whatever, while I'd been drinking, and like the spiritual warfare got intense. I started having terrible nightmares, looking in my reflection and seeing like things that I can't even explain, sort of supernaturally imposed upon me. And again, by this point, for a while I'd struggled to walk through town because it felt like everybody was looking at me. It felt like everybody was talking about me. It felt like people wanted to get me. I'd had instances where I'd basically ran away from nothing at times because I was like, no, they're coming, they're going to get me. It got to the point where I just became desperate of life. And then one day, again, walking through town 6 months later, and I saw this guy. I didn't see this guy. I saw this light. I saw that, like, it was a grey day. I mean, grey, miserable, wet, wrecked day. Across the market square, I saw this light come to me, and I'm like, wow, what is that? And as it came closer, I'm like, that's Paul. I'm like, Paul, I don't want to go to hell, man. I came up to him, and it's like, Paul took me under his wing, started taking me to church 3 times a Sunday. He was, like I say, he was a first-year Bible student. Started looking after me. He was a single parent. He had his own son. I mean, this guy was a recovered heroin addict who, used to be in gangs and hurt people to get money back and stuff like that. Paul became like a big brother, like a mentor to me. We started doing loads of stuff, like just having somebody with me who knew the Bible, who understood the Word of God, who understood what it means to be forgiven and had given a second chance in life, was the right person for God to bring into my life. We did things like we went to different church retreats. I went to London with him. I went down south with him. He just loved on me the best that he could, despite some of the damage that he'd got in his life that he was still dealing with. Ultimately, a couple of years, I got baptized, and a couple of years later, I was at we'd gone to a healing conference, because we'd gone to this other conference at one point where it was about freedom from Freemasonry and spiritual chains and stuff like that. And while I was there, and they were praying, I started manifesting. My face started turning into like this werewolf, vampire face, and I start growling like without even my own control. And it was very scary, but at the same time, I still believed that God was above all things. And so we got invited back to this healing retreat. And during that retreat, I got prayed for by some guy who used to work with Teen Challenge, which works with people with like drug addiction and stuff like that. A great ministry. And I actually had deliverance. I got deliverance, and these demons left me. And it was, again, another one of the most amazing things that happened. We talk about like strongholds and bondage and stuff like that, and maybe sometimes they seem just like abstract ideas, like metaphoric things. But no, my soul was chained. There were parts of me that I didn't even know existed. And so like from that point on, I felt like a new me. I was already a new creation, but I felt like my soul was able to feel things like joy and appreciation that I'd never felt before. It was a year after that, when I got back from that retreat, I was in my flat by myself. and it was late, and it was dark, and I heard this knock, knock, knock at the door, and I went round to the door thinking, who's this? And I opened the door, and I was like, okay. I don't know if anybody remembers Eddie from Iron Maiden, the Iron Maiden mascot. It looks like a zombie with like fluffy hair, like Doc Everett out of Back to the Future. Kind of zombie-looking undead guy. Well, he was at my back door, or someone that looked very much like him, in a black cowboy outfit. It was very weird. And I was like, but at the same time, could see that this was a spiritual entity that I was coming up against. So I was like, just get out in the name of Jesus! And it disappeared, and you could see the trail through the air of where it went through the trees. And I realised that as well, that a part of being a Christian is actually being able to stand up for yourself against spiritual stuff through Christ, through the authority and the power of God. Because, we're told to resist the devil and submit to God. And I think that's worth mentioning. Like, it was so bizarre. A year after that, after speaking, because I had a nurse come out, this guy nurse come out, give me injections every 2 weeks or every month. Nice guy. But I felt the Lord tell me to talk about coming off medication. So I spoke to him. I was like, Pete, and he'd seen a lot of change in my life anyway. I was like, I really feel like I want to try coming off medication. So he's like, okay, well, he'll talk to this psychiatrist team sort of thing. Oh no, I did actually. I went to the hospital and had an appointment, and then the psychiatrist said, lovely Jewish lady, said, well, you can, but we'll monitor you and make sure everything's okay. Make sure it's that you're monitored just in case anything goes wrong. So, at that point I stopped taking medication, and I haven't taken medication since, and that was in, I believe that's 2003, I think it was, that I stopped taking medication. Amen. And after a few months, with meetings with this guy Pete, who, I think he was gay, I'm not sure, but not that, a big deal. But he was a lovely, lovely guy. But at the end of it, he in a meeting, he says, like, Andrew, I'm afraid I don't get to come and see you anymore. I don't have to see you anymore. We're signing you off the books. You don't need any care anymore. So since then, I have not had any psychiatric oversight in my life whatsoever, which I praise the Lord for. And so I've had loads of things that have happened to me since then. Even at that point, even though I was super sure and knowing that God had done great things in my life, I was like as mature as like a 4-year-old. I had no wisdom, I had no discernment, but I just know that if I held on to God's hand, He was going to take me through no matter what it was. And as I say, all the things, and Pete also said, it's a miracle. All the things that the devil spoke over me in my life, or that were spoken over me by, doctors and stuff, God has shown who has the last word and the final say. And all of the, you think of that scripture that hope deferred makes the heart sick, but desire restored is a tree of life. All of the bad, all of the horrible stuff that made me feel like life isn't worth living, and I would kill myself if I didn't think that it would upset my family so much. I just wanted to be out. Nothing, to the point where I've got a future. Not just a future, but an eternal future. There's a plan for my life that I get to be a part of what God is doing, and then when it's all done, and the last days being the last days of sin and evil, then it's gone. The end times, the end of evil, then it's gone. And one day, I'm going to be with Him forever. And even since then, or throughout all my ups and downs as a Christian, all the ways that we grow and learn and make mistakes and sin and fall and get back up again and cry out and learn things which change the way that we look at everything. And, you know, God has been so faithful, and I know that he loves me. I know he'll never let me go, and I know, because I've shared my story quite a lot on the internet and stuff like that, that you know, what great scripture, you know, what the enemy meant for harm, God will turn for good. And we know in all things God works for the good of those who love him, who are called according to his purpose. So in a way, I thank God for all the things that he allowed me to go through, not because it was nice, but because in a way, you know, the things that we go through give us opportunity to be able to minister and reach other people who are still where we were. So yeah, praise God. And just for everyone's information, I am working on a book at the moment. I am about 2/3 of the way through it. So, you know, you'll have to read that if you want some of the gory and the glory details in that. So,
the gory and the glory.
The gory and the glory. So yeah, if anybody wants to ask anything, and I know that we need to wrap up.
Yeah, Andrew, I'm just curious, how did this transformation affect your parents?
Initially, massively. I think watching me go out of control and have no relationship with them and whatever. My dad, who was a hippie, loved playing guitar and stuff like that. He was just depressed. When he saw me get saved, especially when he saw that my life was changing a little bit, and, you know, he actually started picking his guitar up and singing again, which he hadn't done for a long time. You know, and at one point, about 15 years ago, he actually told me, he's like, because he's a mental health specialist, he's not just a nurse, he's a highly trained. He said, like, Andrew, I've thought about writing a book about your life, because what's happened in your life doesn't happen. And I was like, oh, okay, that's cool. So I've thought about writing a book about my life as well. So yeah, like, but I also know just the very same thing that I saw at the top of the stairs when I was 4, my dad saw at the top of his stairs when he was like 10. Because we talked about it. And like, he'd never told anybody. And, you know, I pray for my dad. My mum and dad haven't, you know, become Christians. It's very difficult sometimes to talk to the people that you're closest to or have raised you. But yeah, but generally good. I mean, yeah, I think seeing me down there kind of put them down there in a way. I put them through hell, man. I had the police bringing me back at 4 o'clock in the morning when I was 13 years old. Like, they just ended up stop grounding me, because what's the point, you know? So yeah, and now they've got grandkids, and, you know, we go on holiday together and stuff like that. And, yeah.
It's really good. Thank you, Andy. You know, I was thinking about as you were sharing, there's a verse that comes to mind in Romans 1:16. For I'm not ashamed of the gospel of Christ, for it is the power of God to salvation. You know, for everyone who believes. And I thought, you know, that what you've testified to is that the power to salvation, to change, to bring from darkness to light. I think that's so cool, because, you know, you had experience of the powers of darkness, you know, and the chains, but actually the power of God in the gospel, the power of God's salvation to bring light, you know, and
it's
light.
real.
Yeah,
it's not just words on a book.
Yeah,
you know, it's living, it's power. Yeah.
Really good.
All right, God bless.
Thank you for sharing, Andy. It's really appreciated.